Do you doubt yourself when it comes to your skill set, your talents, and the success that you have to date? Maybe it's that you doubt your own achievements, whether you're really worthy of them or not. Do you feel undeserving sometimes of the praise from coworkers or from family or whoever it might be? Do you have that feeling that any minute now, someone's going to find out that you're a fraud and you don't deserve any of the stuff that you've got? If any of that rings true to you, then I am so glad you found this channel. I am going to spend the next, who knows, 10, 15, 20, I could go on for hours when it comes to imposter syndrome. But this topic is really important and you're in the right place to find out what to do next to start getting a handle on it. Hi, I'm Caroline. I am your personal performance coach and welcome to this channel. This is all about simplifying high performance for people that want to work smarter, not harder. So if that sounds interesting, feel free, subscribe below. I'd love to have you in this community. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the obvious here. What is imposter syndrome? Because it feels like everybody has it. And you know what? You're pretty bang on there. Everybody does suffer from it. This is a really difficult topic to kind of unpick because it feels like there's so much to it. But hopefully what I'm going to do today is simplify what it is, how it comes up, and what you can start to do to tackle it. Now, the first thing is we're going to start with the real basics here, which is that it is essentially a psychological phenomenon where people don't feel that they deserve what they have. That's it. In the simplest form, that is what we're talking about. It's that you feel like you're a fraud. You feel like you don't deserve the things you have. And the things that you have can range. It could be praise from coworkers. It could be the salary that you're on. It could be the achievements in your bio on LinkedIn. It could be anything. But the crux of the matter is that you don't feel worthy of those things. You don't feel like, even though you've got them, it was down to luck. That was all luck. It wasn't luck. But we're going to dive into why some of these things come up at certain points in someone's career. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, there are lots of ways that this can manifest in the workplace, which is usually where it tends to. There are other areas as well, but that's where we spend most of our time typically. So that's where we start to see a lot of those imposter syndrome traits and characteristics coming through. Now, for some people, that can be the constant need to improve. That constant need to always get better. There's always something wrong. There's always something that I can look for that's a weakness. That is something that needs improvement. For other people, it can just be self-doubt over your achievements. Whereas for others, we're into things like perfectionism. Yeah, we're into that idea of nothing is ever good enough. Nothing's ever good enough to actually put out into the world, whether that's a project or it might be a hobby that you've got, or it might be a sport that you're involved in, but nothing's ever good enough. You are a true perfectionist and you end up with perfectionism paralysis. Now, again, I could do a whole video on that alone, but that's another trait that there's something there around worthiness that is not matching what we've got versus how we feel about ourselves. And then some people will simply be really dismissive of compliments, of praise, it might be that you're doing a personal development review, for example, and your manager's giving you loads of positive stuff. Or maybe you're higher up and it's a director or the owner of a business giving you all this praise and you're like, oh yeah, it was just luck, it was just that. You're just very dismissive of it. And some people might see that as, oh, well, you know, I'm not really somebody that likes compliments that much. And that's fine. But if it's over and over again, and if you actually dug into it and found out that it was a little bit deeper than that, I mean, have you done that? Have you really thought, why do I dismiss compliments? Why do I dismiss praise? Is it that you don't feel worthy of it? Because if it is, imposter syndrome could be at the heart of it, because it is for many people. Now, the thing about imposter syndrome, if you Google this and you look around it, something that's quite common is that you'll find these 5 types of imposter syndrome or 10 types of you'll find types and almost like archetypes and characteristics and traits of specific people. And I don't like it. I'll be really honest with you, because I think anybody can be any one of them at any time. these sorts of things tend to manifest at certain points in somebody's career. And that's the way that I prefer to look at it. It's a slightly different take. All the traits are the same. All the characteristics are the same. All the symptoms are the same. But rather than pigeonhole somebody into saying, oh, you're the perfectionist, or you're the this, that, and the other, you're the X, Y, Z. I don't like doing that, because I think people change. Your brain chemistry changes. The things that happen around you, the circumstances that you're in, the situations that you come up against, you can morph. That can change. So rather than pigeonhole you, I'd like to look at this slightly differently. I'd like to take you through the life cycle of somebody's career and show you how imposter syndrome can manifest at different stages within a career. So hopefully it will give you a different perspective, but it will also show you that to an extent, this is normal. This is okay. It's okay to feel like this, and you can do something about it. So let's start with the very first one. It doesn't matter where you are in your career. Imagine you're right at the beginning. Imagine that you are that junior. You're going into the workplace for the first time. Maybe it's your first ever role. Forget work experience. Maybe you don't have any. Maybe this is the first ever experience of being in the professional world. How would imposter syndrome show itself up in that instance? You're really going to feel like a fraud. You've never done any of the stuff that you're now trying to do each day. So there are obvious knowledge gaps that we have to navigate around. There's, especially if you are a high achiever anyway, let's say you're that straight A student, going into an atmosphere where everybody's a professional and you are surrounded by people where you think, God, they've made it. They're doing this stuff all the time. And I'm not. I'm here for the first time. If you are a previous high achiever when it comes to grades and things like that, and now you're going into a space where there's loads of stuff you're missing, that takes a really heavy mental toll. And that's where imposter syndrome can start. So you're into things like, you're suddenly in this workplace where that tactic of being a high achiever and doing more doesn't necessarily work, because you might be doing more of the wrong thing. And then you're like, well, how much else don't I know? So this is where we can start to see it develop. You don't know what you don't know. So it's really easy to feel like a fraud. But you're not a fraud. It's just that you've never done it before. But that's how it makes us feel. So now I want you to move to the second. So let's say that this person, they're now in the business for a couple of years and they maybe get the first promotion. And then maybe they go to that stage of looking to improve constantly instead. That they've been with the business a couple of years now. They want to show that they're always improving. They're always on top. Because remember, this is a high achiever. They always strive before to improve their grades and to get better and to get the best exam results and all that kind of stuff. And now we're into the realms of, well, there's always something I can improve. That's where we start to dismiss positive feedback and be like, well, that's great, thanks. But what could I do better? What else is there? What else is where we tend to put our focus. And it's just a progression of that imposter syndrome that started out as us feeling like a fraud. And now it's, okay, we know a bit more now, but there's still always something. There's still always something that we could improve. So we start to actively look for weaknesses. Sometimes even where there is none, where we can actually find wins and successes, we start to actively look for weaknesses. And this works really well in terms of the way the brain is wired. Because guess what? The brain is wired to look for threats. It is literally designed to keep us safe from threats. So you're now at this perfect marriage when it comes to imposter syndrome between having maybe a couple of knowledge gaps, but you've improved, you're at senior level now, you've got that higher exec position. But you're a high achiever, so you like to look for ways to improve. And you're also working with a brain that likes to look for weaknesses. It's the recipe for disaster when it comes to imposter syndrome. And that's where we start to feel like this idea of nothing is ever good enough. And any minor flaw becomes a big deal. And it's not useful, it's not constructive, but you can see how this evolves. It's not that you're one or the other, it's just evolved. So now imagine that this senior person becomes a manager. They start leading for the first time. Maybe they've got a team. Maybe they want to hire new people from scratch. My God, we're now right back where we started as a junior, right? We've never done any of this stuff before. We've never hired a team. We've never managed people. We've never been a leader. So you've now got somebody that got really comfortable and for years was really good at what they did, always looking for ways to improve, no matter how minor. And now we're promoted into a role where we have none of the skills. And this is compounded by the fact that so much of the management population is not trained to manage people effectively. They're not trained in stress management, in leadership skills, in communication and up-leveling, all of those things that are critical to being a great leader. So it's no wonder that you feel like an imposter. It's no wonder you feel like, God, I'm not good enough to do this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Of course you have no idea what you're doing. Never done it before. Stop being so hard on yourself. Now, it's easy for me to say that. It's really hard to deal with that when it's all up here. It's all internalized. But you see, again, this is just a progression of what we were experiencing before. Now we're right back to feeling like the junior again. So now maybe this manager, they did some training and they've gotten used to it and they've got a team and now they're just getting by and they still feel like there's constant ways to improve. But now they become maybe a true leader. Maybe they're a director. So now we have the added pressure. There's a high impact that comes with director level roles. They are directly responsible for business outcomes. You know, that their job is often tied to things like revenue or talent acquisition and retention or whatever it happens to be. But there is a real correlation, a very real correlation in impact for a director. So now we have all the previous experience of imposter syndrome and it's elevated to a new level because now there's more pressure, there's more risk, there's more riding on this. And it's also that risk that leaves a lot of people feeling like, you know, you're expected to have all the answers. You're expected that when people come to you, you're going to have all the knowledge, the answers, the experience to point them in the right direction. But what if you don't? What if you've never done that before either? What if you're just flying by the seat of your pants when it comes to a crisis that you've got to manage or something like that? And the risk is way higher. So again, we feel like an imposter because we've not dealt with it before. And now we come to the final stage, which is that entrepreneur level, that business owner level. Now, whether that is a freelancer or you own a company of several people or doesn't matter. The process is very much the same. Because now entrepreneurs are in that position where they have to wear many hats. So for example, let's take that director that's now decided to set up as a consultant on their own. Well, now they have to be a great accountant and they have to be great at sales and marketing and they have to be great at delivery and they have to be great at client experience. They have to do everything. So now, again, we're back feeling like the junior. We're back feeling like we're in square one, like we've got no idea. And the reason I wanted to show you this progression is that everybody feels this. So if you are feeling it right now, I want to give you permission to feel like that because everybody does. At some point, everybody feels that way. And the first and best way of looking at it always is that you should look at it as I'm growing. If you are experiencing imposter syndrome, you are experiencing growth. You are experiencing doing something for the first time. And the only way to not feel like an imposter is that idea of confidence, right? And confidence is knowing. It's, I'm confident in that. I know what to do. You don't know what to do unless you've done it before. So we have to push through that imposter syndrome. We have to see it as I'm growing. I'm not a fraud. I've just not done it before, but I'm learning. And that's the most important reframe to put for this entire thing, because the sooner we do that, the sooner we start to get a handle on it. What can we do about it? Past that reframe, past that idea of, understanding that imposter syndrome is pretty normal, considering everything and all the factors in the equation. The next thing that we have to do is understand that it isn't something to be afraid of. It isn't something that there's something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with you. And for some of them, we have to diagnose, is this a short-term thing or a long-term thing? Because there's plenty of circumstances. Let's say you've never given a presentation in front of 500 people before and you've got to do it tomorrow. Yeah, you're probably going to feel like a bit of imposter syndrome's creeping in. That's normal. It's also very short-term. It's a very circumstantial thing. You feel it because of this thing that we've got to deal with right now as an immediate threat. And that's very different to long-term. Because longer term imposter syndrome can come from things like not being able to manage stress effectively and leading to burnout and things like that. And that's very different, because that's where we're into imposter syndrome is creeping in because we are overwhelmed, across the board. And because we're overwhelmed, we don't really feel like we're on top of anything. We come back to that idea of wearing many hats. And you can feel like that no matter what level of a business you are in. But if you're overwhelmed, you feel like you're not doing a good job of anything. And because of that, you feel like an imposter again. You feel like, I'm just not good enough. Everybody else is on it. Everybody else is on their A game, and it's just me. I'm the only one that's not coping with this. And that's very different to, we've got the short-term circumstantial and we've got the long-term over here. So how do we cope with this? There's 3 very simple questions that I want to take you through. Okay, so question number 1. I want you to ask yourself, I'm feeling imposter syndrome, I'm calling it out, and it is because of fill in the blank, right? Ask yourself this question. Is that fill in the blank bit a short-term circumstantial event, or is it a long-term, it's been there for a while? So as an example, okay, I'm feeling like an imposter here. I feel like I haven't got a clue, and it's because of this event that I've got to deliver next week. I've not done it before. That's circumstantial, and there's really right away we can think of resources and people that we can go to maybe help alleviate that, to get that knowledge, to fill in those gaps. Whereas it might be, and I'm feeling it because I've got way too much on my plate. I don't know how to do any of it. I don't know how to, and that is a totally different animal. So that's always the first question, is work out what yours is. Work out whether it's short-term or long-term. Then second is that we need to work out whether this is a recent development in our lives or whether it's long-term, as in this is months and months. Because there might be some short-term development. Let's say that your sense of imposter syndrome has come from not being as good as everybody else in a new department, or not being as good as everybody else because you've just moved into a different role, or not being as good as everybody else because you've just joined a new sports team and actually everyone's way ahead of where you were. Those sorts of things, that is more of a short-term thing. Again, it's not an immediate event, but it might have built up only over the last few weeks. There's immediately ways that we can look to alleviate that, because if it's something to do with being in a new job, okay, well, you can maybe have a conversation with a manager, or you can talk to the people around you about their experience. There's immediately things we can do. Whereas again, we're digging in even deeper if it is that longer term version, where if this has been building for a while, if you felt overwhelmed for a while, and that's where the third question comes in. So if we are in that state where we have felt burnt out and overwhelmed and doing too much, and I can't say no, and everything's on my plate for so long, now we need to bring in a different way of looking at things. We need to ask ourselves, is this time for a reframe, for a reset? Is this a time where I need to strip things back to basics and look at where is this coming from? Because my imposter syndrome has been going on for a long time, and I think I need to address where it's coming from. Because it might be deeply rooted since the moment you were hired for some specific reason. It might be to do with something a coworker said to you that you took to heart and you didn't really think about it then, but now it's starting to build and you're starting to see it everywhere. There are so many things that can lead us. Like I said, that 5 stages, right? There are so many things along that journey of a career that can lead us to feel these things. We need to get to the bottom of where they come from. So I'm just going to say those quickly again. First, we want to get to the bottom of it. Is this a short-term circumstantial thing, or is this longer term? Second, if it's longer term, is it really long-term overwhelm that we're dealing with, or is it a recent development in our lives that has led to a higher stress level? And third, if it really is long-term, is it time for a reframe? Is it time for us to really strip things back to basics and look at where this is coming from? If it is, and you're at that stage, I will leave a link to a free download that I have for you called Burnout Basics, and that will help you to pinpoint where that stress is coming from. So I'll leave that down for you. It's absolutely free. It takes a couple of clicks to get into it, and it will help you to really fine tune where is that coming from. So I really, really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that it's given you a different perspective maybe on imposter syndrome and helped you to see maybe how imposter syndrome has developed in your own career and your own life, or maybe see it in other people around you. I would love to know in the comments. Please leave me a comment below. If any of this has resonated, I would love to hear your thoughts. But I will leave you with all of that now, and I will see you again in a week's time next Monday when I will set you up for the week once more. But until then, take care.